This is a lecture from Open Tuition. For the free lecture notes that go with this podcast, please visit opentuition.com.
Now we're going to look at marketing, but so that we understand what the marketing approach means, we have to look at certain other approaches that companies can take to trying to sell their products. And the first we have here is a product-led approach. This is a company maybe headed up by a couple of very clever engineers. They take great pride in the cleverness, the innovation and the quality perhaps of what they're making. But unfortunately what they're making may not be what the public wants, or it may be made too well. It may be over-engineered so that the price is too high. They make good products but they might not sell. The production-led approach is where the company concentrates on producing very, very efficiently, no idle time, wastage and so on. But all that might happen there is it produces goods which are then very efficiently kind of stored in the inventories and don't sell very well. Then we have the sales-led approach. The sales-led approach is really characterized by a very high-pressured sales team, almost forcing people to buy goods and services which they don't want. There have been notorious cases of that in the past. One was the concept of a timeshare. This was popular during the 1980s, during 1990s in a lot of Spain and Canary Isles, where speculators put up apartments, and instead of selling a whole apartment to somebody for the holidays, because of course that means you have the apartment the whole year because maybe you only use it for 2 or 3 weeks. They had this timeshare concept where you would buy maybe the first 2 weeks in July, but you would have that available for the next 99 years. Then somebody else would have it for the last 2 weeks in July and so on. And if you put up, let's say, even just 1,000 apartments and you divide that into weeks, then you've got about 50,000 units to sell at that quite an expensive price, and maybe they're a kind of concept that people weren't very happy with. And these salespeople used to go up and down beaches, almost hijacking innocent holiday makers, taking away in a coach for a presentation and almost holding them hostage until they would sign the dotted line promising to buy one of these apartments. So sales-led, and sales is not the same as marketing. Sales-led is really pushing articles on people that they're maybe not absolutely convinced about. Marketing-led is quite different. Marketing is a very kind of humble occupation, though you may not think of it like that. But it is finding out what do our customers want, or what do they potentially want. And then what we can do is, if we make these goods and using research and development to establish what people want and develop the appropriate goods, then really they will just about sell themselves. So they will explain to people what this will do for them, say, yes, this is what I want, you're pleasing your customer, and these will just fly off the shelves. And you can see how it worked for something like Apple iPhones. There's no hard sell on those, but they have produced a product which people queue around the block to try to buy. So marketing is not us imposing our views on customers. It is finding out what customers want and tailoring our products to that. It's not completely passive. Customers may not know what they want. So within marketing, within the research that you have, you may produce prototype products, show them to customers and so on, and see what they think of those. And then if they think they're good, then you can go into full-scale production. Now, what are the stages in marketing? And the first stage is market segmentation. And this is recognizing that most markets are not homogeneous. They're not all of exactly the same people wanting exactly the same things. Different people, maybe at different ages, want different sorts of articles. You just have to think of clothing. Obviously, male and females want different sorts of products. Lifestyle. So again, in clothing, sometimes you want casual clothes. Sometimes you want more formal clothes, and there may be different shops and outlets and indeed makes, if you like, which furnish those different segments of the population with what they need. Wealth. We know you can buy expensive suits, you can buy cheaper suits, and there's going to be a range of what people want to pay for these. And even geography. In food, for example, there are often regional differences. In clothing, there are obviously regional differences depending on the local climate. So what you do is you have to study the segment, see how it could be logically split up, and at some stage we're going to have to think about what segments we want to address. We might find that a particular segment is very competitive and it's going to be quite hard to get in there. We might find another segment isn't very profitable, or perhaps another segment is actually difficult to reach the customers, it's difficult to find them, and we may decide not to necessarily approach every segment or produce goods for every segment. After that comes the market targeting. This is deciding what products we're going to aim really at particular segments of the market. And the first type is known as undifferentiated market targeting, and this is really where one product does all. So we're not actually recognizing that there are different segments within the market. It is a homogeneous market, and it's terribly difficult to find a product which will fit into that. Even something as basic as water, we know you can buy it out of the tap. You can buy different brands of mineral water. You can buy with gas, without gas. You can buy big bottles, little bottles, and so on. What people are doing is saying, well, there are actually different segments of the purchases, and one will not fit all. So this is more of a kind of theoretical concept, and most things will go to differentiated market targeting. Well, basically what you have is product 1, product 2, product 3, going to different market segments, designed for different market segments. And you see this every time you go shopping. You go in to buy some shampoo, for example. You get big family bottles, you get little ones for travelling. You get shampoo for dry hair, you get shampoo for red hair, you get shampoo for greasy hair, you maybe get shampoo for no hair. But what the marketing people are saying is we will sub-segment the market, and we make a product just right for them, then that will grab their attention, it will sell very well. There's almost in some cases an over-proliferation of products, so that sometimes making a decision becomes kind of quite difficult, and you have to be careful actually not to scare off potential purchases. And then we have concentrated market targeting, and this is really the marketing name for what you might call a focus strategy, where you just concentrate on one segment. You may have heard of the word niche marketing, where maybe the firm is so small that it can't provide 4 products for 4 different segments. It says, right, I will just concentrate on that segment, make sure I make the perfect product for that segment, and get great buyer loyalty and quite good profits because the product suits them so perfectly. So we know we may have a number of segments to aim at, to target. How do we go about actually aiming accurately at a particular segment? And this is known as product positioning. Product positioning was really invented around the 1950s by a guy called McCarthy, and initially he had just 4 elements in that. We have got the 4 P's there, and this was basically for physical products. Because in the 1950s it was a sale of physical products, things that made up the vast bulk of the economy. And then it was extended somewhat later into 7 P's, and what we have here is really for the marketing of services. I'll just mention why the ACCA 3 have been put on here. First of all, people. If you're selling a service, then the chances are that the company selling the service, their staff have more interaction with the buyer. A service like maybe airline services, flights. You interact with the staff in check-in, you interact with the staff on the aircraft. Another one could be in hotels. You interact with the reception staff, the dining room staff, and so on. Whereas in a manufacturing business, you might never meet anyone on the staff of the manufacturer. The bad ones, if you like, can be kind of hidden away in the factory. But with services, you meet the people, and you have to be careful that these people don't do damage. They have to be of the right caliber. They have to be trained well. Process. What is the process of getting the service? How easy is it to maybe navigate through an internet sales site to book your flight, book your hotel, and so on. And then physical evidence. At least if you buy a physical product, you often leave with that in your hands. But if you are buying a service, if you're booking a flight, how do you know it's really been booked? And you have to make sure, for example, that you maybe get an email for confirmation. So 3 extra ones, which we're not going to talk about very much again, having mentioned that they are important for services. So let's see what's under the heading of product. And under the heading of product is basically what the thing does, what it looks like, what its quality is, what its brand is. So if you buy a phone, you can buy a very simple non-smartphone. You can buy a phone with GPS, you can buy a phone with or without radio, and so on. These are known as its features. Quality is there. We like a choice perhaps of a high quality and probably high priced item, or maybe a low quality, lower priced item. And maybe we depending when we're buying, what we're buying for, we maybe change our choice. The design can be very important. I keep going back to Apple, but the design standards of Apple make their products look really, really good, really cool, as a judge once said, and so on. And again, people may be willing to pay a premium for the design. The brand, people often pay irrational amounts to get hold of a particularly popular brand. I mentioned already, I think, t-shirts. You can buy nearly identical t-shirts at vastly different prices, and you pay the high price not so much maybe because the quality is that much higher, but because it has our logo on the t-shirt, and I suppose people like to show off. And then packaging. Packaging very important for some products. If you look at cosmetics, look at perfume, very often it looks as though the packaging is probably more expensive to produce than the contents, but it all goes together as the offering, if you like, which has been made to the customers. Price. The examiner has said that for us, price is by far the most important of the 4 Ps. We are accountants, we should know about price. And also price is the fastest of the 4 Ps to change. You can't change a product very quickly without going through redesign, for example. But if something's not selling well, you can slash the prices more or less instantly. There will be another chapter in this just following, where we go into price and price setting in just a little bit more detail. But we can kind of cover some of it here, perhaps. First of all, there is the price level. Should we be selling this at $10, $15, $20, and so on? Some of this will depend on competition. Some of it may depend on the brand. Some of it may depend on the quality, and so on. But we have to make a decision about the price level. Discounts. Very important in business to business, where people buy huge volumes of products. And if they buy huge volumes of products, then they expect a discount. But it's also important sometimes in business to consumer markets. There is the 2-for-1 sort of offer that you get. That's a discount. or buy one get one half price. That's essentially a discount, and we have to think what might be suitable. Terms is an interesting one. By and large, if you're as a consumer buying something, you tend to pay cash, or at least with your credit card. If you are a business buying, then you're probably going to get your standard 30 days credit. But it can be more sophisticated than that. You can actually use the terms to make yourself very attractive to a particular segment of the market. So let's say that you were selling agricultural chemicals and you were selling to farmers. So agricultural chemicals, seeds, maybe insecticides, those sort of things. Farmers, by and large, are going to be thinking of buying those in springtime. That's when they need the seeds, that's when they need the artificial fertilizer to make the crops grow. So it's a big outflow springtime. Then over summer the crops grow. And then in autumn the crops are harvested and the farmer eventually gets the cash flow back. Now this very cyclical cash flow can put farmers into some difficulty with their cash flow management, and very often it's funded, of course, by going to your bank and getting an overdraft. However, think of a supplier of these agricultural chemicals who says to the farmer, look, you buy this from me in spring and you don't have to pay until the autumn. We will extend you credit for 4 months, 6 months, whatever it takes. Think how attractive that offer would be to the farmer. And the farmer might even be willing to pay a slightly higher price to get rid of the bother of going to the bank and arranging an overdraft. And finally, we have strategic pricing. Strategic pricing, first of all, is price skimming. Price skimming, you see it a lot in new technology. When, for example, 3D televisions were brought out, the price, certainly in the UK, is probably about £1,500. Because there were some people out there who would spend £1,500 on that new technology. Or maybe they needed it desperately for some reason. And then when you use up that layer of very rich people, or perhaps very stupid people, you come down to a layer who might spend £1,400, and then down to a layer who will spend £1,300, and so on. So price skimming means go in with a very high price, but you expect this price to be gradually brought down to some kind of stable level after a while. Penetration pricing is essentially the reverse. Penetration pricing is where you go in with a very low price, and the hope is with this very low price, we get it to right here, very low price, and I can write very low price, you're going to get a very high sales volume. And if you get a very high sales volume, then you might get a very low cost. And the very low cost might allow you to sustain the very low price. You get a kind of circle going around here, a virtuous circle. A low cost is enabling you to keep the low price is enabling you to keep the high market share. So that could be permanent, and a very high market share and a low price can be a barrier to entry. Somebody else coming into the market which you've got such dominance in is going to find it really quite hard to make a profit. And then we have related product pricing. One sort of related product pricing I think can be seen in inkjet printers. You sell people the inkjet printer maybe for $80, and then in a couple of months when they go to replace the cartridges cost about $75. The idea is once you've got them hooked on the basic product, you're really going to make your money on the consumables. Another example of related product pricing is in range of cars. So you can see maybe an advert saying, I don't know what the proper price is, but let's say you see an advert saying Ford Focus from 10,000. So you go to the garage thinking this is a good price, and you see this Ford Focus for 10,000, and you discover that everything's manual, no music system, no air conditioning, no powered steering, really underpowered engine, and so on. And that's not really a car that you would particularly want to buy. So you ask to see the next one. Maybe the next car you see, basic one was 10,000, let's say. This one you see is maybe 14,000. And now we're talking. This is a car you would quite like. Electric windows, air conditioning, music system, decent size engine, and so on. And marketing people know this helps you make the choice, because really you've established that 10,000 is the lowest price, and for that you would get a car you don't want. And what you kind of concentrate on then is in a way the 4,000. For another 4,000 I get a car I do want. And then sometimes they will pitch in a very expensive car, the upper model of maybe 20,000, with all sorts of fancy engines and exhaust pipes and paint jobs and so on. And you say to yourself, no, I won't go there, that's too expensive. And you get your kind of conscience is almost kind of relieved that you've made a very sensible, middle-of-the-road choice in going for the car at 14,000. But we'll come back to price. Next we have promotion, and promotion includes advertising, but much more. Advertising in the press, on television, and as I mentioned, I think in an earlier chapter, advertising increasingly seen and increasingly important in the internet. Advertisers love it because very often it's volunteers really in the internet. You've typed in a keyword and Google picks up what you're interested in and then feeds adverts of the right sort to you. Advertisers can track everything you do and they only pay if you click through on their adverts. This has stolen a huge amount of revenue from television. You have to think where suitable advertising sites might be. If you are advertising very specialist product, then you wouldn't go to television. Internet will be fine, specialist magazines will be fine. If you're advertising products that are going to be potentially bought by a huge range of people, then television may be the most viable way of reaching a huge number of potential customers. Sales promotion. Sales promotion happens very close to the act of buying. Sometimes in supermarkets you see people, they've got little bits of cheese or something for you to try, or little bits of chocolate for you to try. That is sales promotion. So is the buy one get one free kind of offering. That's often regarded as a form of sales promotion as well. Personal selling means a salesperson, a salesman or a saleswoman who comes to you, spends time with you and tries to sell you a product. It's universal in business to business. That's what the sales force does. It goes around the customers trying to drum up business. You only get it in business to consumer if the item being sold is big enough really to, I suppose, support, the profit in is big enough to support the salesperson's wages. So you won't get somebody desperately trying to sell you a bar of chocolate, but you may get somebody desperately trying to sell you a car because the profit in a car is makes it economically worthwhile to pay a salesperson. Finally, there's public relations or PR, a good mention in the press. For example, a company making a donation to charity, or a company perhaps sponsoring the local soccer team, gets their names on the back of the jerseys and so on. Not usually maybe advertising specific products, but keeping the name of the company in people's attention and hopefully creating a favourable impression about that. Just before we leave, promotion worth mentioning two types of promotion. There's pull promotion and push promotion. So if we think about push promotion, let's say you had a new chocolate bar that you were the manufacturer of. What you have to do is you have to make sure that the shops selling chocolate, that they are going to stock that. So you go around, this would be personal selling, and you would push these products into the shop. You'd say to the shopkeeper, this is going to be a big success. And then you want the customers coming in. And the customers here, this is going to be what they call pool promotion. So in here we're going to have the pool. Let me just see if I can write with this mouse. We'll give up in a minute. So they go in and say, have you got that chocolate bar? In a way, their demand is pulling it into the shop. So push it into the shop from the manufacturer, pull it into the shop from the consumers. And you want both of those to match up. There is no point in launching a new chocolate bar if all that happens is that customers see this being advertised on television, they go into the shop and it's not there. Or if it's pushed into the shop and nobody actually notices the new chocolate bar because it hasn't been advertised on television. They must kind of marry up, this push and pull promotion, so that it all works. And then we have place, the fourth of the 4 P's. The place you go to buy it is really distribution. And we have to think of a number of considerations. What should be the length of the distribution chain? And the shortest length of distribution chain is manufacturer to customer. This is sometimes called direct marketing. There's no middleman at all, no shop really at all. And this was often used, still is to some extent, when buying computers. You can buy a laptop directly from the manufacturer. And because it's only the manufacturer who needs profit, it can be a very cheap way of buying the product. However, it works well for computers because they can be perfectly specified and described in terms of memory and speed and so on. It doesn't work, this direct marketing manufacturer to consumer, just as well for something like clothing. Although you can produce catalogues, you can show the clothes on the internet and so on. When the clothes arrive and you try them on, you find it doesn't quite fit, or you don't quite like the colour. And for those sorts of operation, about 50% of what's purchased over the internet will be sent back as unsuitable. That's a considerable cost for those suppliers. The longest type of distribution chain is going to be manufacturer to wholesaler to retailer to consumer, the traditional way in which goods get into, if you like, corner shops. 3 people need profits: manufacturer, the wholesaler and the retailer. So the goods, when they get to the end seller, the corner shop, are going to be quite expensive. But what this does allow is for the goods to be very widely distributed in the community. Every little shop will have these goods. And if, for example, you were selling certain sorts of chocolate bar, that's what you need, because people are not going to travel a long way to get a particular make of chocolate bar. Your chocolate bar has to have this very wide kind of distribution network, otherwise you're going to begin losing sales. We need to think about the types of goods and the suitability of the outlet as well. If you have luxury upmarket goods, then the outlet has to be one which kind of suits those goods in the right place, with the right people in it, with the right kind of decoration in it. If you're selling cheaper goods, then maybe you could sell them just through a supermarket or a more ordinary shop. But the place has to fit. The type of goods has to be suitable for the type of goods which you're trying to sell. Then we can look at marketing research very briefly. We said that marketing is very humble kind of process. We have to find out, what do customers want and need? What can we make for them that's going to grab their attention? We can't just sit in a dark room thinking up ideas. We have to go out and actually see what customers think of our ideas. So information is needed, not guesswork. And this is marketing research. It's sometimes just called market research. The proper name is marketing research, because it can look at all of the elements of positioning. All of the 4 or the 7 P's can be researched. What price, what way should we distribute, the place and so on. What kind of product was going to be effectively promoted. And there are 3 types really of marketing research. First is desk research. Desk research is where you can sit at your desk and you make use of information which has already been collected. It may be available in your accounting department. So if your accounting department were only to bother to analyze sales, perhaps by customer, or analyze sales perhaps by geographical region, or analyze sales maybe by month of the year, then you have a huge amount of information which could be potentially quite useful in your marketing efforts. Increasingly, what you may have in supermarkets is loyalty cards. And these loyalty cards, you think you swipe them through and what they give you is some points that you can redeem at the end of the year. But no, what they're actually doing is they're recording what you are buying. And then they build up a very careful, detailed bank of information about what you prefer. They keep this information maybe for about 5 years. This is called basically a data bank, which we are going to be establishing of people's preferences and habits and so on. And then what you do is you go through this vast amount of data and you try to find or extract interesting information. So if, for example, I suddenly began at the supermarket buying babies' nappies, then they could predict that maybe in about 6 months' time, they would assume I had a baby, then in about 6 months' time they'd say, well, maybe the baby's now going to be moving on to solid food. Maybe they could send me an email or some vouchers offering money off the suitable type of food for a child at that time. So this establishing of this vast amount of information about consumer preferences is mined. You go through it hoping to find unexpected correlations, patterns, what have you. Field research means going out and specifically arranging to usually question people and ask them about their preferences. So quite often you see people standing with clipboards and they maybe stop you and say, did you watch television last night? What adverts did you see? Do you remember any advert about a car? What was the make of the car and so on? They will be trying to collect information about whether maybe a new car advert was having an impact on people. So here it's quite expensive to do, at least the desk research is really quite cheap. Other places you can get information for desk research, sometimes governments have it, local governments know roughly the population in certain areas. Central government knows something about the population, the number of people under 5, the number of people in the population over 70, which could be good for your marketing effort to at least know the size of the segment. And finally, there are test markets. Test markets is really your last chance of getting the marketing right. So rather than making a great big launch of a product with lots of expense and lots of embarrassment if it goes wrong, you choose a relatively small area of the country that's representative, that has a stable population, so not a holiday town, and which has got suitable facilities. By that I mean if you're going to advertise on local radio, your test market must have local radio. So you make this as representative as you can of the whole country. And you try out your product, your pricing, your promotion, your place, and so on. You see whether or not this seems to be popular. You might make some final little adjustments, but if everything goes pretty well, then it will be relatively safe for you to make a national launch. You have done everything you can. Having said that, there are some products, some companies which have made some rather disastrous launches. 2 of them actually was Coca-Cola, which is a very, you'd expect, skilled marketing company. One was about 10 years ago, I think, Coca-Cola decided to launch New Coke, New Taste Coke. I think this was the big idea of a new chief executive officer. They were always in contention with Pepsi and they were losing out a little bit. So they said, we'll relaunch Coke with a new taste. Basically, they took the old traditional Coke off the market, kind of overnight launched a new Coke, and all that happened was people moved faster to Pepsi, and within a very short time they removed the new Coke and brought back the old one. And you kind of wonder, how on earth did that happen? Why did they not product test this with some consumers? And maybe it was that the new CEO had a kind of a mission, wanted to make his mark on the company, and maybe began ignoring the true test results. The second failure of Coca-Cola was again maybe 10 years ago. They were losing market share to water, to carbonated water with gas. And so they decided in Europe to launch a mineral water, a fizzy mineral water. And it was launched, and it was called Dosani, D-O-S-A-N-I. And it was launched, going well. Then about 2 weeks after the launch, a London newspaper announced that what they were selling at a very premium price, what they were selling was basically London water, more or less taken from the tap. And Coca-Cola kind of responded, said, yes, it is London water, it is from the tap, but what we do is we super filter it, really, really pure, and then we add back certain salts, I suppose, certain minerals, if you like, to give it a nice mineral water taste. But nevertheless, they had marked it up. A bottle of water taken from the tap would cost about 1 cent. They're probably selling this bottle for about $2. There was a huge markup in it. And it didn't go maybe too well, this explanation that they were marking up London water by several thousand%. And then a couple of weeks after that, the local health authority took some of this water and analysed it and found that it actually was contaminated. That some of these salts that were being added, minerals that were being added to the water, had themselves been contaminated, and this was putting the water outside the health regulations. It didn't actually harm anyone, but it was technically not legal to sell. So here was Coca-Cola taking perfectly safe London water and in a way polluting it and selling it at a markup of about 2,000%. And they had to more or less overnight remove all bottles of Dasani throughout Europe. And that brand will never be seen again in Europe. It's still seen in America, which was kind of untouched by this scandal. So even the best marketing companies can sometimes kind of fall flat on their faces.